There is no time in human history where the general population is more aware of the crimes and corruption happening around them. Thanks to modern technology, the rich and powerful cannot hide their ill deeds like they did in the past. But a problem faces the common man. What happens when crimes are seen but no action is taken? When we have evidence of wrongdoing, but that evidence never sees the light of day? We know they're lying to us, and they know we know they are lying, but still nothing is done. Well, maybe it's time for a new type of justice system. Maybe we need exceptional individuals whose sole duty is to dispense justice, and no matter how high someone is in the business, government or politics of the world, their money and power will no longer be able to prevent the law. Now is the time for the judges. They are to be the new judge, jury, and executioner. The judges themselves will be different from the comics and movies that the idea comes from, but some similarities will be present. For instance, they would have the absolute power to dispense the law without interference. That means these special few would have the power above the police, the judiciary, and the government when it comes to the law and applying it, and the potential punishments that come with their decisions. Obviously, some will scream, well, this will just be corrupted. Maybe it will. But in the present state of the world, where child rapists and murderers get less time in jail than people who post mean comments online, and when we have a massive child sex crime ring involving the rich and famous, and the evidence to prove it being withheld and outright blocked, also the witnesses and individuals involved are either found dead or to have supposedly committed suicide, cough cough, this is clearly corruption at the highest levels, with powerful people covering up crimes, and this is where someone like a judge could cut through the red tape and the corrupt scum that allows such things, and actually dispense justice, and bring the worst kind of people in our societies under the same laws that apply to you and I. Remember, if people are punished for their crimes and fear the repercussions that come with committing them, well, crime drops, and innocent people are saved from being abused and exploited by the worst in the world. So the people picked to be judges would have to be of the highest quality in every aspect. Far better a person than myself, I must say. With the candidates being smart, physically fit, having extreme adaptability and intuition, also having the highest moral character imaginable, bordering on the incorruptible. These people really are going to be rare, with probably 1 in 100,000 even considered for the job, never mind actually becoming a judge. And candidates would have to be picked fairly young, ideally orphans, with no ties to anyone, mainly so they cannot be blackmailed or threatened through loved ones or friends. It would be a tough life, far more of a burden than a privilege, but these judges just might be the saving grace that we need to finally tip the scales of justice in the right way, and put some fear into the worst criminals who hide behind money, power, and being certain protected classes in the government's eyes. The judges would still have to act within certain parameters of the law, and a lot of you will say, well, the laws are already weak and broken, so they cannot do anything. Well, they can. It's not always how the laws are written, but it's how they're applied. Take my country, for example, the United Kingdom, where the crime of murder actually does carry a life sentence which can be the whole person's remaining life. It then goes down to either 30 years, 25 years, or 15 years, and if the offender was under the age of 18 at the time, the offence can have a starting point of 12 years, which I think is way too low if you've murdered someone, but that's personal opinion. Now, many times, a weak and bleeding heart moron judge will give some of the worst lowlights very low sentences, and allow these people back on the streets with plea deals, and they commonly go on to commit more crimes. Well, the new judges would dispense the law to the maximum for any crime the person is found guilty of. No longer would scumbags get plea deals and have weak-willed juries say, oh, they have kids, so you got to let them out after a few years. Nope. If you ruin someone else's life and cause chaos and destruction on the good, hard-working citizens of a nation, you will face the full extent of the law, and it's about damn time. Now, obviously, judges would be able to determine what sentence they give, but the idea is, if you've committed a very dangerous, very bad crime, such as murder, rape, the judge is not going to go easy on you. There's none of this, oh, I have a family, oh, I've had a hard life. No, you've murdered someone, you've raped someone, you've done the worst things imaginable. You are going to jail. You're going for a long time, and maybe you'd even get a death sentence, because personally, I think that needs bringing back for the worst crimes as well. Now, a big problem is corrupt elements that try to stop justice being served. Firstly, there's the endless leagues of lawyers, and yes, lawyers can play a vital role in society, but obviously a lot of you will know if you look into it, a lot of these lawyers these days do like pro bono and free work for people. They actively go out their way to find the worst people's murderers, paedophiles, rapists, and they're not just giving them a defence in the legal system as is required, they're actually going out of their way to try and get them less time in jail or, better kind of conditions in jail. It's like they don't go after victims trying to help them get, more compensation or better chance at life or getting their person who's committed horrible crimes against them more time in jail. They go for the worst people to try and help them, which is just insane, but it really just shows these people, in my opinion, are trying to undermine society and justice. And they're also always trying to get as much money as possible, as we've seen. They tend to not care about what the person's done, as long as it gets them a good paycheck and a win in court. And we see many lawyers and judges who have never had a crime committed against them and haven't really lived in the real world focus on the criminal's quality of life and how it will impact them. They never think about the victims of the crimes, the poor children who are abused. They just care about, the criminal filth, the junkie scum. Well, this filth, lawyers, will not be able to persuade or pervert a judge's judgment. The judges override them absolutely, and if someone tries to stop or block justice, they are classed as an extension to the criminal's crimes and face the exact same punishment. So if they try to stop a judge putting a murderer in prison for the rest of their life, well, they will get the privilege of joining that person in the prison for the rest of their miserable, snivelling lives. And yes, I'm not keen on lawyers, I know some are decent, but I think we can all agree there's a lot of horrible ones out there, a lot of really bad lawyers, a lot of people who really just take advantage of the system and take advantage of you and I when a crime is committed against you. Now, the odds will be stacked against the judges, but I do believe there are large amounts of good people in our justice systems and our police forces. Yes, everything from police officers to lawyers, there are decent ones out there. But they're scared to speak up and do the right thing, because if they do, they will be targeted. Well, the judges would be able to deputise and take control of any law enforcement, legal, judicial and domestic assets needed to dispense justice. Nothing would be beyond their reach or remit. Truly, the long arm of the law would reach into the lowest gutters and the highest boardrooms in the land. No one would be above or below the law. Now, this means the judges will be targeted legally, physically, and in every way possible. So the individual selected to be a judge will need to be tough beyond reason, both mentally and physically. They need to be prepared for everything because they're going to be hit so hard and regularly by everyone. They're going to be a major target until people realise if you mess with the judge, it's game over. Now, to go hand in hand with the power to take control over these assets, we'll draw up new laws that state that anyone or group that attempts to interfere with a judge's lawful actions or targets a judge will, if found guilty by a judge, get life in prison, and depending on the exact nature of the interference, it could result in a sentence of death. Now, this may seem harsh, but we've got to remember this is the modern world. Most people don't fear a god or a higher power. They truly believe themselves to be the highest intelligence and power in the universe, which I'm a believer of. There's always something bigger, stronger and more intelligent out there somewhere, but many don't. So you really do need to have harsh punishments for people trying to stop this new form of judgment. So it either is going to be you lose all your freedom, or ultimately you lose your life, which is the most viable thing to anyone. And on the matter of the judges being targeted, if a judge is under threat, most likely by powerful forces trying to stop justice being implemented properly, it would trigger all judges to respond to the threat immediately, with the full force being available to them. So the idea is if you attack one judge, you attack all of them. And this would be cemented in the system, and this would make even the strongest criminal organisations or powerful institutions think twice before taking a shot at a judge. Also, we need to take a watchful eye on NGOs and civil rights groups. Now, before you say, oh, well, civil rights groups and non-government organisations, they all do good stuff. Well, actually, when you look into it, a lot of the time, they are pretty corrupt. Most of the money just goes to paying wages. A lot of them spend more time arguing for rights of criminals and trying to help people take advantage of the system than they actually do trying to help people. Most of the change doesn't happen in these things. And it'll be a constant battle by them against the judges just saying, well, they can't have this much power, we can't trust them. Well, I'll just say, look into NGOs and civil rights groups, and you'll find that many are very corrupt and used by politicians and powerful people to funnel money and push their own agendas. Also, lobbyists are thrown into there. I'll cover them later in the video, I believe. Major operations into corrupt institutions such as banks and even law enforcement themselves would be a huge step for the judges to take on. As we all know, banks allow dirty money to be filtered through the system. Imagine if we caught and punished all those involved, not just on the side of the people committing the crimes, but also the ones who turn a blind eye to it and make money from the filtering of their profits. It would give a massive kick up the arse to other institutions to not only start to abide by the law, but to come forward and report those who are committing crimes. And yeah, you'll hear the old saying, snitches get stitches and you're a rat, Sir Jellybean. Well, I challenge you with this. If you knew someone was selling children into sex slavery and you turn a blind eye to it or don't intervene, and you wouldn't do anything, you wouldn't even report it, you just ignore it, then in my opinion, you're just as bad as the worst scumbags on earth. And quite frankly, I despise people who just turn a blind eye to such horrible things, and I wish the worst fate upon all of you. Just saying, like, if you think it's okay to just say, oh, well, it's nothing to do with me, I don't care, well, you're just as bad as them, in my opinion. With the inception of such a program, the first targets would be those on the top of our society, not the bottom. Look, I hate thieves and scammers as much as the next person, but can we truly say we have a legal system if you're locking up a guy for stealing a bike, but allowing someone who's raped and killed someone to get away with it because they have large amounts of money and good lawyers? No, you cannot. Because if people lose faith in the rule of law and legal system, well, that leads to some very dangerous consequences. For instance, right now in my country, people's confidence in the law is arguably at its lowest ever. There is no trust or even expectation that the police and judicial system will go after and punish criminals. And on the odd time that they do, the sentences are weak and reduced. It's pathetic, and it leads to civil unrest and vigilantism, and in the long run, outright civil disorder will follow. The judge programme showing that the law will be applied equally to everyone, no matter their standing, be it the lowest pauper, a beggar in the street, all the way up to the Prime Minister or President, depending on your country, will bring back trust, and with that the population will support law enforcement again, and even assist in stopping crime. The result would be we get a far better country that people can live their lives in without having the fear of becoming a victim of crime. The judges, with their dispensing of justice, would in my eyes find support from the police and military personnel who would see them clearing out the corrupt system, and I think more elite echelons of these groups would actually be against the judges. But the average police officer or soldier would be for the judges, and it doesn't matter what a general or police inspector wants if all their subordinates refuse to follow their orders. We would see an outright revolution in the power centres of our nations, and in turn the leadership. This in my case is a very good thing because a lot of the leadership are there simply because they're yes men and they do as they're told. They don't stand against the corrupt establishments. They would finally have to act in the public good or face judgment. I actually hope some of them try to defend the establishment and the corruption because then the judges get to put them down, but I'm rather harsh and don't believe in that some of these people can be redeemed. I think some of the people that are, allowing crime to happen, some of the worst ones possible, can never be redeemed. But, like I say, that's a personal opinion. The judges would also have several prisons under their direct control. Everything from construction to the staffing must be handled by them. As so many prisons are rife with corruption, drugs and criminality, we need prisons that are actually law-abiding and do their jobs punishing criminals. Reforming criminals is not the priority of the prisons. The first thing is actually punishing criminals. This is a problem with modern justice, and it winds me up. People say, oh, well, we need to reform. Actually, your first priority is punishing them for the crimes they've committed against innocent people. Reform happens after they've served their sentence, and that's if they want to be reformed. And as we've seen, pretty much across the board, reform very rarely happens. Most people go on to commit more crimes or just aren't bothered and becoming better people. So when people say, oh, well, reform's the priority. No, punishing the criminals is priority and making sure that the victims get justice for the crimes that are done to them so all their physical, mental, emotional, financial pain isn't for nothing. Too long do criminals get the priority over the victims, and it stops with the judge system, should I say, a new justice system. Sorry, I'm getting a bit animated by it, but it does annoy me. The judges obviously have huge amounts of power, but they're also not above the law. They're expected to act to a code of conduct and always have a reason for every action they do. They must be rational and level-headed and not allow their emotions to cloud their judgment. And they would always be under a watchful eye to make sure they don't fall to temptation or corruption. And regular training and rehashing of their core duties will be needed to make sure in a sense that they're brainwashed to be loyal to just one thing, the law. And if they themselves begin to break the laws and become corrupt or rogue, it would be up to their fellow judges to bring them in, dead or alive. Over time, if the judge system is a success, they would take over the law enforcement and judiciary bit by bit. This is where the risk of becoming what we hate is at its highest, and maybe the judge would be best as an elite unit that comes in when it's most needed, but only time would tell. The hope would be that the judges rule effectively and bring harsh but fair law enforcement to the entire nation and eventually the globe. But, that's a pipe dream of my own. I just think right now people don't really trust their nations and their, justice systems, and people would probably turn to a judge system just to even trial it, just to see what happens. But, only time would tell with that. When it comes to combat situations, which are going to be highly likely for the judges with the fact that they're going after the most powerful and wealthiest people in society and powerful institutions, so there would be, very dangerous people coming after them. It wouldn't be the smart pistols like in the Judge Dredd series, which would be cool, but the tech really doesn't back it up. If you're into the Dredd film, which I definitely am, for instance, the bit with the incendiary pistol, the fact is you can't fit that much incendiary munitions in such a small projectile, and the pistol is just basically a mocked up pistol, and it's all done through CGI. It's not a working pistol, so we'd have to go for more, conventional weaponry. But think like kind of like special forces get to do, where they get to pick their gear a bit more and they get to tailor their loadout to what they need. That'd happen with the judges. They could take whatever weapons they needed. They'd have the most advanced body armor and equipment available to them, and obviously that includes stuff that are hidden in the Ministry of Defense and Department of Defense labs that are probably very high tech but not on the common market, and the cost would not be an issue. Our government spend tens of millions on a jet but won't spend hundreds of thousands on advanced body armor because it's too expensive. With the judges, they will get the best what they need, and obviously they wouldn't just go around by themselves like in the films and comics. They would move around in squads and be backed up by deputized people, because if a firefight happens, one judge is going to get outgunned by 10 people with rifles. Whereas if you have, 3 or 4 judges with multiple deputized people backing them up, then they're a force to be reckoned with. And vehicle-wise, they aren't going on the the standard motorcycle. I think it's called, whatever, I forgot the name of it right now, but it's too vulnerable. They're going to have armoured cars or armoured personnel carriers to move around, maybe even some, I guess, helicopter gunship if you really want to pull the boats out, but armoured cars or APCs would be smarter, because obviously you don't want them just getting hit in a drive-by or getting the car bombed or attacked by like a Molotov cocktail. They need to be well protected, well defended, and well equipped. So, expect to see some really cool loadout for the judges if it ever happens, which probably won't, but, it's nice to think about. Now, something has dawned on me. What is the reward for being a judge? Because simply saying, well, they do it for the greater good of mankind is not really a fair deal. They do need some kind of a reward in a sense, but it's hard to say what, because obviously you're going to provide them with the best medical care, the best food, the best accommodation they kind of need, but anyone who's actually suitable to be a judge wouldn't want a reward. They would do this because they believe that the law must be applied equally to everyone, and that the most powerful and richest in society shouldn't be able to escape it. But there needs to be some kind of reward, some form of payment. It's hard to determine what, but I can't really think what. But, obviously it's a fitting reward serving mankind for the greater good. But, I think these people, we would have to look after them the best way possible. And if they got to retirement age, which, obviously you'd hope they would, maybe they get an extremely, insanely powerful pension, like very wealthy. They get the best house, best trips. I don't know. I don't really know how you'd pay them truly, because you don't want people in it for money, but people getting into the judge system wouldn't be there for money. They'd be there for duty and honour and, serving the public good. But yeah, that's a tough one to nail down. But hopefully, hopefully we can come find a fitting reward for such great servants of, the public. So, a bit of an odd video, some quite controversial topics, obviously, and obviously feel free to comment on it. As long as you're polite and decent about it, I don't mind arguing about things, or discussions, should I say. But obviously, if you just come at me calling me a nutter and saying this is evil, I don't really care. That's up to you. But, hopefully I've kind of put out what I thought a judge system would be, the basics of it. Very basic, I might add. Because obviously you could go for hours, days, weeks talking about it. It's such a tough thing to cover. There's so much depth to everything they're doing. And then, obviously, the ramifications and consequences of it are, almost unimaginable. But, you've watched the video, think about it, see if it changes your mind on some things. And obviously maybe there's other ideas that you guys have that'd be better than a judge style system. It's just something I thought of with everything going on in the world lately. I won't mention any specific cases, but we all know the one that's being blocked, and everyone knows that basically has been done, but nothing is being done. And I just think, well, if the justice system is going to fail us, then maybe we do need something new. Maybe we need a complete revamp of the justice system. And potentially we risk having something far worse, 100%, I agree. But we also have the chance of getting something far better for the common person. Because quite frankly, the rich and powerful always seem to get, the best of things. It's kind of how the world works, but, maybe it's time for a change. We'll see. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. An interesting one to kind of look into and to discover things about and discuss. And as always, thanks for watching, guys, and have a beautiful evening.